The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Youth and Access to Technology. My name is Patty Clorn, and I'm happy to be the moderator for this evening's webinar. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items with you so you know how to participate in tonight's event. We've taken screenshots to go over a few of the housekeeping items. So you're going to see the attendee interface on the screen. You should also see something that looks like this on your own computer desktop in the upper right corner. So right now you're listening using your computer's speaker system by default. If you would prefer to join us over the phone, just select the telephone in the audio section and then dial in. Information will be displayed. You'll have the opportunity to submit text questions to today's presenter by typing your questions into the questions section of the control panel. And you may send in your questions at any time during the presentation, and we'll collect them and address them during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. We'd like to share with you a bit about Morneau Shepell. So Morneau Shepell is the largest provider of health, behavior, and productivity solutions, helping over 500,000 people each year through therapy, education, and coaching. Children's Support Solutions works with families, schools, and child care centers to identify children's needs and help them reach their potential. We work with infants to young adults of all abilities and believe that every child is unique, and understanding that uniqueness is what we do best. We provide a wide range of services, including screenings, assessments, one-to-one and group interventions, medical legal rehabilitation, and solutions for schools and daycares. Children's Support Solutions is family-centered and interprofessional, meaning that we always start with the questions, what will work for this child and what is right for this family? We think about the mix of services that will help the child. In the Morneau Shepell model, professionals are not just under one roof. They plan together, train together, and work together on a client file. It's an integrated approach to helping the family. Our therapists and educators are trained and certified in a wide range of disciplines, including clinical psychology, speech-language pathology, physiotherapy, occupational and behavior therapy, music therapy, special education, psychoeducation, guidance counseling, as well as tutoring. We have a special offer for you tonight. So if you mention that you participated in the Youth and Access to Technology webinar when you book an appointment with Children's Support Solutions between now and April 30th, we'll waive the administration fee. So after the webinar, you can visit our website, www.childrensupportsolutions.com, or call 1-866-653-2397. I'd now like to introduce our presenter for this evening, so Ms. Beryl Kwan Pun. Beryl is a French psychologist and neuropsychologist. She studied psychology at Chambéry University and graduated from Aix-Marseille University to obtain a master's degree in psychology and neuropsychology of cognitive disorders. Various professional training opportunities helped her to develop her assessment and attentive listening skills used to support her patients' needs, and in particular those suffering from cranial traumas, obesity, or diabetes. Furthermore, she acquired experience in the community life sector with patients affected by Alzheimer's disease or autism spectrum disorders, bringing her to understand the importance of a stable environment in everyday life for each individual. Supporting and collaborating with families is a priority in her patient care. She is now working at Children's Support Solutions as an intern to obtain her psychology and neuropsychology degree equivalency in Quebec.
Thank you for this introduction, and welcome to this conference. Today we'll have 5 objectives. First, we will define the current context of digital consumption. Then we will identify the main benchmarks of healthy use of screens for our children and adolescents. We will define cyberdependence, what it is, and what are the main signs. We will identify the risk factors that lead to cyberdependence. And finally, we will provide avenues for intervention to address cyberdependence. So the current context is the digital age. We are living an evolution and a new development of our society and working tools. This is what brings us today to talk about digital society. We used to manipulate objects in the real world, but today we manipulate them through screens in the virtual world. This is a big advance which brings many changes in our lives, and digital tools can be a way to relax, to communicate, to share, to collaborate, to stay informed, etc. There are many positive impacts of this digital society, but of course there are some new negative ones as well. For the positive impacts, we can say that it supports the development of social skills and can stimulate communication through chat. It can help us learning how to deal with social contact, stay in touch with friends and family, make new friends, and it supports teamwork. Information about the world is at our fingertips. We can access news, get answers to many questions, and it can feed our interests and hobbies. And it's also a learning opportunity to develop our visual intelligence, to multitask, or to learn how to handle things ourselves. It can have some negative impacts as well, as social isolation by only creating virtual relationships. It can have consequences on physical and mental health, creating fatigue, lack of sleep, unhealthy diet, loss of sense of reality, drop in academic performances, and a sedentary lifestyle. It can have consequences on social life, sometimes leading to loss of significant relationships, family conflicts, and also cyberbullying. It's an easy access to personal information and can lead to violation of privacy. And of course, one of the main negative impacts is cyberdependence. Being in front of a screen has many impacts on children and adolescents, as it can develop trouble sleeping because of the blue light. It inhibits the production of melatonin, which delays the time falling asleep and reduces the quality of sleep. It reduces the ability to focus and attention. It increases irritability and behavioral problems. Dopamine is a chemical messenger which plays an important role in attention and motivation. When children are exposed for a long period, it takes time for the brain to produce it again. When they stop playing, they will be less able to focus, more sensitive, and sometimes aggressive. Screens can also reduce the development of motor, language, and executive functions. Time spent in front of a screen is time that the child will not spend developing his acute global motor skills with games, hobbies, or sports. He is exposed to a very smaller lexic than if he was interacting with other children and adults. Tablets and cell phones are also so intuitive that their use inhibits the development of organization strategies. Using screens also increases risks of obesity and development of diseases linked to it, because too much screen time reduces the time spent moving around, and as we said, it can lead to fatigue, headaches, postural problems, bad diet, high blood pressure, or diabetes. Those digital tools have many purposes, as watching videos or listening to music on YouTube, networking on Facebook or Snapchat, visit websites, download videos, complete schoolwork, playing online or offline games, and buy and order online. There are many reasons to spend time in front of a screen, but we need to try to limit it. Before 2 years old, ideally, a toddler should never be exposed to television or any other screen. Between 18 months and 24 months, parents who wish to can introduce screens. However, the programs and applications should be high quality, and the toddlers must be accompanied by an adult who can help them understand what they are seeing on the screen. Between 2 and 4 years old, the time spent in front of a screen should not exceed 1 hour per day, and it should be accompanied by an adult. Further, exposure time should not replace other activities which are essential to a child's development, such as free play, social interaction, or sleep. Between 5 and 11 years old, children should limit their exposure to screens at a maximum of 2 hours per day, and parental monitoring is strongly recommended. At 11 years old and up, time spent in front of a screen should be limited to 2 hours per day, with a maximum of 3 hours for older teenagers. But, of course, at all times, you should try to limit the use of screens as much as possible so that your child develops other interests. You can try to put on a schedule according to the daily activities to be performed. Try to limit your own use of screens because children need an appropriate model and should not feel in competition with technology. Avoid using screens during meals or in the bedroom to avoid use before bedtime, for example. If you try to watch television, watch it with your children as it promotes discussion and exchanges. Use parental control tools to ensure that your child does not have access to inappropriate content for the age. And finally, it is very important to educate children about the consequences of posting photos or personal information on social media, or the consequences of cyberbullying. For adolescents, try not to forget what it was to be in your teens, transitioning from childhood to adulthood, entering the society through friends. They are going through many changes, and it impacts the whole family by changing relationships and roles. But the needs they have are not different than the ones you had, only the means are different. Now about cyber dependence. It was defined as a difficulty controlling impulses manifested by recurrent and persistent use of technology or other methods of communication, which results in difficulties in social, psychological, academic, or professional functioning, as well as a significant sense of distress. There are various signs of cyberdependency, like increased hours spent in front of a screen to the detriment of other social and emotional engagements. The real world becomes less important. There is a loss of interest and a reduction of activities or offline entertainment. There are significant consequences on the rest of life, work, school, etc. Like any dependence, it involves an obsession and a compulsion to be in front of the screen, and there's a feeling of lacking. There is a loss of pleasure and sense of purpose because screens become the primary source of stimulation. Digital consumption is used as a way of escaping difficulties, and the individual is preoccupied about his or her usage. Today, the word cyberdependency covers various behaviors as online gambling, chats, auctions, and of course video games. Jung inspires from criterion from the DSM-3 to elaborate a list of symptoms, defining 3 categories of dependent users. The ones that consume in order to communicate and to have social relationships through Snapchat, Messenger, AskYellow, WhatsApp, etc. Some people are in search of virtual sexual contact through sex, Snapchat, etc. And they are the ones that consume in order to invent a character on the internet through avatars on online games, for example. But those categories do not explain what users are really looking for through screens. What is the reason of this overconsumption? There might be various reasons, as trying to control relationship with others through electronic devices. They can control the relationship distance, and this hold the electronic tool provides is not as easy with human beings. But being able to control relationships is very important to build ourselves and to be able to act on the world and create according to our expectations. It can be to avoid the feeling of loneliness and abandonment. The screens is always there, always available night and day, and it's always possible to connect. Screens can also help manage or forget their emotions by replacing them with excitations. It can help handle difficult situations they had to live, and it can be a defense against the feeling of emptiness. Some users play more in order to reduce a bad feeling than to generate a good one. Reduce physical or psychological pain. For example, children with painful diseases, going through grief, a breakup, a parental divorce, parent depression, academic failure, etc. They can also consume in order to become an ideal person. The avatar the child makes has exceptional weapons and clothes, and through him he cultivates an image of himself that is less and less related to who he really is without linked to reality. The avatar becomes then more important than the essential needs of the real body. Studies on the subject showed that dependent users often show an insecurity in their relationships, low self-esteem, as well as difficulties in managing and expressing emotions, with attachment, being alone, and distinguishing between what is real and what is symbolic. If you recognize your child as cyber-dependent, there are some guidelines you can follow. First, communicate. It is important to maintain a connection with your child and to show openness. Take a step back. Try to see how your child can reintegrate some of the activities he liked to do before becoming cyber-dependent. Check for suicidal ideation. Supervise the use of digital tools through parental controls and Wi-Fi management tools. And do not hesitate to ask for help and find out about the technological tools your child may be exposed to. To help your child with digital consumption, you need to try to build on your relationship with him. Get interested, try to put yourself in their shoes and listen, putting your judgment aside. Ask questions like you would do for any other activity. For example, what level are you on your game? Or did your friend like the photo you posted on Facebook? Be there, share moments with them, offering activities where they can bring a friend, or try to allow a period of time where they can exchange with their friends on the evenings. You may try to understand the function that addiction plays in your child's life by exploring their consumption with them, trying to answer which place digital society plays in their life, how long do they spend on digital tools, how long do they think they can spend without it, do they think they should be supervised in their digital consumption, and if so, how? Is their digital life more satisfying, as satisfying, or less satisfying than their real life? You can try to offer thrilling, real, and safe activities like rides, courses, skateboards, etc. And you might try to take an interest in their ideal character, trying to know what is special about this person, why this feature rather than others, and do they sometimes feel like their ideal character in real life? You will learn a lot about your child. Now, to structure digital consumption, you need to promote a positive and constructive use of digital tools. Prioritize routine completion before exposure to screens. Plan daily activities that do not depend on the use of digital tools. Offer a bank of time that your teenager manages himself. It will help him develop his self-control, and he could keep a logbook to plan his schedule. Plan free time in advance to have activities that meet their needs while being incompatible with the use of digital resources. Prioritize the real world over the virtual world. Limit Wi-Fi access and certain websites, for example, pornographic sites. Limit places where digital tools can be used for the whole family. Can it be used in the bedroom or only in common areas? Try to charge electronic devices in a common place for the whole family. determine essential applications and try to delete the other ones. And you can install a software on the computer, for example, an alarm or a stopwatch. In conclusion, it is very important that you take an interest in the digital consumption of your teenagers. Try to foster communication and a relationship with them. Remember that you need to be the guarantors of their reality, so try to prioritize what is real rather than what is virtual. You can use structured negotiation to monitor their consumption within a customized framework and promote the use of technological devices according to their benefits. Now, if you are looking for help and you're in Quebec, you can call 811 if you're in need for assessment or orientation. Le Grand Chemin is a center where you can find help for teenagers with addiction. Free visits of the center are offered, as well as screening evaluations, group therapy, etc. Depending on your need, you have various numbers you can call for suicidal crisis or if you need of help and referrals. And Children's Support Solutions has an online service with video conference or support on the phone with a psychoeducator. If you're in Ontario, you can try to contact the Centre for Addiction and Mental Health. The central facilities are located in Toronto, and 10 community locations are through the province of Ontario. The Trafalgar Addiction Centres operate in 3 addiction treatment centres. Each of their centres offer their own distinct treatment programs and pricing in order to facilitate different levels of treatment intensity. For more information, you can find a variety of educational content for tablets on the Edululu Canadian website. There is an article on social media and mental health by the Canadian Mental Health Association at the second link. If you want to have more information on screens and growing up or guidelines to introduce screens to your children, you can follow the third link. And the two last links are to get some parental controls tools. Thank you for listening. We will now take some questions if you have some.
Yeah. So thank you, Beryl. We're now going to be answering the questions that were submitted during today's presentation. And as a reminder, you can still submit questions through the questions panel in your attendee control panel. So we're just going to have a look here to see what the questions are. Okay, so we have a first question coming in here from a parent who's asking, who's telling us that his son spends all of his nights on the computer, and what should this parent do about that?
Well, as mentioned during the presentation, we suggest that you try to communicate as much as possible with him. You need to get interested at his digital consumption, find the reason to identify his needs. It's possible to offer him a bank of time. He will be able to decide how to use it. Without intent to alarm you, it is important to stay alert of suicidal ideation so you can ask questions. It's also possible to limit Wi-Fi access or the rooms tools will be used in.
Great, thank you, Beryl. Now we have another question coming in here from a parent who's saying that they found nude photos of their child on their child's cell phone. This parent didn't talk to their child about it and is wondering what to do.
Well, you have to educate your child because it is actually production of child pornography. Keeping it in his cell represents possession of pornography material, and sharing it with others represents distribution. The risks associated with this are important. Under the age of 18, both for the person who's sending it and the one who's receiving it, that is illegal. It is therefore important to approach the subject quickly, even if it makes you feel uncomfortable. If you are uncomfortable, for example, a single dad who has to deal with his own daughter, it is important to seek the help of a professional who can approach this with your child and accompany him or her in this process.
Great, thank you. Okay, the next question that we have is a parent asking, or rather letting us know that their child spends a lot of time on the internet, but the child doesn't feel like he or she does. So Beryl, do you have suggestions for parents when the parent and the child don't see eye to eye on the amount of time that's being consumed on the internet?
Well, communication remains essential, as well as building a relationship of trust. It's better not to have an accusing tone, but to open the discussion on why it worried you and the reason you think he does not tell you the truth. You can offer to see a professional if he prefers not to speak with you. These are all possible ways of intervention.
Okay, the next question is from a parent saying that their child spends a lot of time in front of the internet, and as a result has stopped going out and engaging in his or her regular activities and doesn't see his or her friends anymore, and the parent is really worried. So what advice would you have for a parent in this situation?
Well, it is possible to mobilize for your child. Invite him to do an activity with you or friend at least once a week. You have to understand what he is looking for in front of his screen, for example, the type of game he's playing, and try to answer his needs in another way. Do not hesitate to go and seek help to accompany you in this situation and to better guide you according to the situation you're facing.
Great. Thank you, Beryl. So thank you, and thank you to everyone who attended today's webinar on youth and access to technology. Once you leave today's webinar, you'll receive a survey on the presentation, so we'd appreciate it if you gave us your feedback. You will also receive a follow-up email within the next 24 to 48 hours with a link to view a recording of today's webinar. So you'll have both the audio and the slides, because I know a couple parents asked that question, so you will have that coming your way within the next 24 to 48 hours. And on behalf of Children's Support Solution, thank you so much for joining us today, and have a great rest of your evening.